didn't have to think about the body. For a minute, it was like, okay, by itself. You know, so I didn't have to think about it. You know. So the body becomes light. The body becomes almost like weightless. I'm not lumped down like this, but I'm holding it up like this. Not too tight, not too loose, just right. And the Buddha says something specific about this. I'd like to read it to you. What kind of person is one? Because there are 7 kinds of persons to be found existing in the world. What 7? There are 1 liberated in both ways, 1 liberated by wisdom, a body witness, 1 attaining to view, 1 liberated by faith, a Dharma follower, and a faith follower. These 7. What kind of person is 1 liberated in both ways? Here, some person contacts with the body and abides in those liberations that are peaceful, immaterial, transcending form, and his taints are destroyed by seeing with wisdom. So when we're sitting in meditation, that's the goal, that's the objective, that's what it lends itself to. Abiding in states that are peaceful and immaterial, transcending form, and mental defilements are destroyed through this experience. So when we come out of a certain state of peace, you know, I was watching a show the other night about a family, and it's one of these like dog whisperer things, where they come and get people together, you know, so they can function. This family did nothing but fight. He said, and they were trying to run a business, but they couldn't run the business because they fight all the time. And he said, I can't do anything about their business. I have to get this family together and get them to stop fighting. And so he had them talking, you know, and about, you know, like, why do you do this and why do you do that? And when you say this, it hurts me. When you do that, it, you know, it makes me feel like you don't feel I'm competent enough to, and they did all of that, you know. But at the end of it, they decided to like trust one another and lay aside, you know, all of their fears and ideas about what one was doing to the other. And the business started improving because of the peacefulness, the harmony of the family members as they came together. And so the Buddha's talking in this way. Once you have a taste of a certain peace, some things that you do, even though, you know, like you're thumping for what's right, can't measure up to the peace. But you have to have experienced that level of peace. If you haven't, it can't be desired because you have no reference for it. Once you have a reference for it, then when you're doing that thing that you used to do, that was better than doing nothing, but it's not better than peace. And so, you have a new bar, a new standard So the next time you get with someone, and we always have the you know, but you have experienced some level of peace that, you know, I don't even want that to mess with it. I don't want that to mess with my peace. Suddenly, it's not that important for me to say what I need to say. Suddenly, what she does, that's not going to bother me because I'm not going to let that take away my peace. You know? But we have to have these experiences, to have something, to not just aspire to, but to recognize is our true home. It's our highest state. So we've accepted other things as that. Once you touch this, once you taste it, as Buddha said, 80 parts ago, come see for yourself. Once you taste this, then you have a new standard. And as often as you go back to it, the more it sets in that this is where I want to be. And you start finding more skillful ways to stay in that state. And you start finding more skillful ways to reproduce that when you come in contact with others. And then suddenly, you know, like my opinion is not that important. Like having to be right becomes not as important as us finding a way to peacefully coexist. Maybe I have a little give and you have a little take. Maybe the other way around. Some good idea comes because you're not running, you're not being pulled like a bull with a ring in his nose. You're not set off when that person does that thing, you know, but you're still sitting here in your repose. And that person does that thing, and it doesn't affect you in the same way. Now I can talk all this good stuff right now because I'm in the zone. I'm not always in the zone. So we should know when we're in the zone and when we're not. And, you know, this is not really one of those fake it until you make it things, because if you keep faking it, like you'll never make it. You have to endeavor to be there. You have to really want that. We have to want to give up our dramas, our storyline. It's our willingness, this effort that's involved in this. We have to want to spend time with it to master it. But to have a little taste of it makes you desire more. So you need a taste. So I always say when you're practicing, if you know, even if you sit for 30 or 45 minutes, if you're not entering into what's available there, then maybe you should do a little bit less time. As we're like, we want quality over quantity. But the quantity will come when the quality is there. The quantity will come when the desire is there, when the willingness is there, because the more you step into this way, the more you have to step out of some of our other ways, because they're incompatible. You have to choose. Sometimes it takes time to take a choice. No, we have to think about these things. Yeah. So you give yourself time. That's why we ponder. That's why we reflect. And before you know it, you'll be able to execute, making a right decision. You don't have to do so much thinking. You have to do so much preparation. I mean, after a while you start to find like all your preparation is really useful if you're going to be responding spontaneously to the moment, like what is arising right then and how to meet it. And you can go anywhere, you know, not having to get prepared because you're tuning yourself to be able to meet whatever arises moment by moment. And with this comes a confidence. You know, there's a confidence. If in faith in that sense as well, faith in the sense of confidence. Because when I did this, there was this. This is the reward of this. You know, the confidence that I can accomplish. And the funny thing about it is that I can, as the ego-based I, the one that needs to be protected, the one that, you know, needs to be noticed, the one that needs to be recognized, the one that needs to be propped up, the one that, as that one diminishes, that sense of I, another sense of I-ness arises that is formless, it's boundless, it's vast. And suddenly you feel as if you encompass the whole room. You feel as large as the whole room. So when you step into that room, you absolutely feel it. So that means that you can touch every person that's in that room with your own largeness. Wrapping with them, unifying with them. In the same way as you trained with the breath. Until you found that space where there was not you and breath, but there was just this unification, this unity of mind, this singleness. I hope that didn't sound woo-woo and hocus-pocus. Because that's the reality. Okay, so now, they have no schedule. So now, thinking about that which upsets you, that which hurts you, that which bothers you, that which causes you to you know, suffer, act out, feel pain, all of that. So when you think of that incident now, I'm so sorry. Now that one's not my phone. So I forgot to turn it off. I apologize. But that one was not mine. So when you're thinking about that thing and the thought of it brings some fear, brings some trepidation. The thought of it, you know, thought just truth and like a flash, you're angry again, like it's happening right now, you know, and you recognize that. Can you see how if you just turned your attention, through practice, turned your attention to your object, which is your breath always with you. So it's, I can't wait till I get home, pull out my object. You know, always with you. In that instant, when you feel it arising, that anger, that, there's a lady, and we're working on our retreat center, and she's so sweet. She's a neighbor that lives across the street. She comes over to inspect, to supervise, to, you know, tell us what to do, you know, every day. And but it's her way of being engaged. She's so happy that we're there and that we're doing this, and she just has a little habit of sort of being into everything. You know, it's just her way. And so she comes over and she says to me, pats me on my shoulder, said, "Yes, sir. There's not a lazy bone in your body like those other ones, is it?" You know, that's how the conversation started. I said, no ma'am. He said, nope, you work hard. I said, yes I do. So now there's another brother that was standing over here. I could like feel the steam starting to rise, you know. And then after he went away, these young fellows working in their 20s said, Mom, they always call me Mom. I said, Mom, I still have to say something to that lady. I said, well, what would you say so? He said, well, she was talking about, I said, she was just speaking from her experience. She was actually giving a compliment. And I said, could you receive it as just a compliment? And not like, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I feel you on that. But could you just receive that as the compliment that she was offering? I said, she just learned something. No, we're not all lazy. And so that's it. You see what I mean? It's because earth, air, fire, water, space, body, just earth elements. Because somebody else sees it as something else doesn't change what it is. You know, so how do you see it? That's what's important. And that determines like what's going to happen in that moment. When something beneficial is said, something unbeneficial, unuseful, something kind or something not kind. You won't major on the minors, you will get the point as opposed to maybe how it's said. You know, she comes over every day and she has comments because she's just so amazed. When the fire marshal came out to inspect, they called me on the phone and said, you need to be out there. I said, okay, I'll be out there. When the fire marshal pulls up, I go and say, hello, I'm Pannavati. He said, yes, the owner here? I said, I am, I'm Pannavati. He said, no, I mean the person who actually owns it. I said, is there anything wrong with me owning it? You know, and he said, oh, I'm sorry. I mean, but he had to hear it 3 times because I couldn't imagine that this, 90-unit retreat center could be owned by a black person in Hendersonville, North Carolina. You know, I mean, because that's just their frame of reference. You know, that was his frame of reference. But that's it. You see what I'm saying? But there's no need to take offense about something like that. Unless you're wounded. Then if you're wounded, you're going to act out of your woundedness. So it's important for us to look at what besets us and to work on that. We're all not working on the same thing. We're working on lots of different things. We're in certain environments where we have to be circumspect. We have to be careful. We have to forgive. We have to understand something and find skillful ways to work around it. We have a lot of gender issues, and I have a young man, and he has difficulty around gender. So he likes for me to refer to him in the plural. But I went to school for so many years to get the syntax right, and if it's a male and a he, a female and a she, it was 2 or 3 of you, it was a they, it was but he wants me to say, so I said, it's difficult. I said, but can you feel me that there's no, I said, I'm just so old. I said, I'm trying to get this. He said, well, you just don't want to do it. I said, it's not that I just don't want to do it. I said, I've gone so long for these years getting, subject and predicate together and write what's plural and what's singular. I said, it's just difficult for me to line it up that way, in my head. So I'm constantly correcting. I'll say, so-and-so said they want to go to the store. I'm like, so-and-so said he want to go. I mean, they want to go to the store. So I'm trying, but I don't have it quite right, And so sometimes we have to give a person the benefit of the doubt, So that's all I'm saying. We don't have to make everything a battle. But it's a work that we also have to do. I said, you're going to be really, really unhappy you know, if you're going to require the whole world to relate to you in this way. Because there's a whole lot of folk that are not going to do it. And some are not going to do it, some ain't going to want to do it, some not going to be able to do it. You know, you're just going to have to be comfortable in your own skin, being who you are, knowing who that is, and being okay with that. That's where you need to work. So now that we know why we're meditating, this cultivation that we're talking about is along these lines. We're doing something when we're in here. We're concentrating the mind. There's the thing about concentration. Pannadipa mentioned it earlier, like in boiling the water. You have this much, toxic matter in the water. You boil it down, you condense it. Now you got the same amount in this much of water. It's more concentrated. It's more powerful. It's the same way that when we take the power of the mind, and it's a fantastic instrument. But if it's scattered all over the place, then you can't get as much use out of it. But when you train it, you concentrate it, and you pack it into this space, and you direct it somewhere, it is absolutely powerful. It's like the difference in an incandescent light bulb that's lighting up a room and a laser where all of the energy and impact of the light is directed through one point. And that laser will cut something, it will explode something, where the light will just gently diffuse all over the room, all over the room. Same light, maybe same amount of power, but the difference is in being, willy-nilly diffused versus being concentrated, focused, and directed. So there are times we want to direct the energy, we want to direct our attention, but we just have not trained. So we're not able to. And so we fail at something. We don't have arouse enough energy to get up and do something. Just simply because we haven't trained, not because we cannot do it. Yeah. Okay, so let's take a break. I don't think we're on our time schedule now at all.
I am light. I am light. I am light. I am light. I'm not the things my family did. I'm not the voices in my head. I am not the pieces of the brokenness inside. I am light. 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 I'm not the mistakes that I have made, or any of the things that caused me pain. I am not the pieces of the dream I left behind. I am light. I am light. I am light. I is all light. Oh, light. Oh, light. Oh, light. I am divinity defined. I am the God on the inside. I am a star, a piece of it all.
Isn't that a beautiful song? It's by India Ari, A-R-I-A. You can Google it on YouTube. I think it's just a beautiful, wow, I got loud here. I think it's just a beautiful reminder that we're more than what we see in the mirror, and we're more than our thoughts, we're more. That's what this whole meditation experience is about. It's letting us know that we're more than what than the information that we get from our sense gates that connect us to the outside world. And going inward, we discover something about ourselves on a much deeper level, much deeper fabric of phenomena. And this is where it starts to like bump up against science, and why there's this convergence of science and spirituality. It's a great time to be living in. It truly is. And so, I think you've done good work today. You might be feeling a little bit tired, a little bit exhausted, a little bit over what's that word?
Stimulating.
Yeah, just like too much. My father was born in 1899, and when he was 85, he turned to me and he said, "Baby," he said, "I was gone from horse and buggy to a man on the moon." He said, "It's just been too much in one lifetime." He said, I'm through." No, he said, I'm through. And so sometimes I get so full, when there is an insight. And I think that there are many insights over the course of this day. And we can see how great an insight can be over the most insignificant things. That helps you to understand something about fusion and something about power. And we think of ourselves as being so powerless, and when in fact, just this raw potential as beings on this planet to change the whole course of, just to change the trajectory of where we're headed in the world. And it doesn't take everybody. It takes a few of us. Like the power of one is so phenomenal. Over the past decade, we've been working in Thailand for rights for women, and working some with the slave trafficking and the sex trafficking, but mostly just from the standpoint of empowering women as spiritual teachers in that country. And that's the only way we're going to raise the standard of the girls and the women. It's the only way we're going to change the minds, the points of view, the references for the boys is through building up the women and allowing them to work. And it is actually against the law for a monk to encourage a woman, you know, to become a bhikkhuni, or and of course they don't have them there at all. But over the past 10 years, we've been just quietly ordaining and training women, and they have been wearing the robe. But it has not been without a struggle, and I'm sure most of you know about that whole issue about ordination for women in Thailand and Burma. Well, 3 days ago, the village men burned down our headquarters, and so the nuns have had to flee for their lives. And we talked with some of our sisters in Taiwan. It's a very big, strong, you know, women monastic community in Taiwan, because the line did not die out. So they've been there for a very long time and very established. And they said that they would help do anything that needed to be done. They offered all 50 women refuge in Taiwan. But I got an email yesterday, a couple of days ago, and Dr. Lee, he said she's the nun who stays there and trains. She's American. I go over and ordain, help her ordain, get some other nuns together so we could, you know, have a platform. And our nuns are the first nuns that have ever been, you know, that have been ordained in Thailand with a platform of monks and nuns. We actually have Thai monks there, but they hold a fan in front of their face. You know, we filmed it. We needed to film it to have records, but they hold a fan in front of their face so they can't be recognized. And they scribble their signature so you can't tell, but they know that they're men. They're male monks. So she said, well, she wanted to stay, and I said, you know, there's really no glory, no honor in being a martyr. I mean, you can't live to serve another day. And you cut off the head, the body dies. And so I was trying to encourage her to leave the country. And she sent me an email yesterday, and she said that she would leave. You know, even when we're doing the good work, we can't get attached to what we're doing. You know, then I told her, you know, you're selfing right now. This is really about self, holding on to your work, holding on to what it is you're doing. And I don't think that, not only is it wise, I don't think it's compassionate. And I don't think it's going to be beneficial. It's better, you know, we can communicate with the Thai women without us being physically there, having the physical presence at this point. With 50 nuns, we don't have to have a bhikkhuni training center. We have 50 women spread out all over Thailand, living in their villages, doing what they're doing. So I said, it's time, you know, to come in and maybe do something else or continue this work in another way. And so she did send me an email, you know, and you never know why something is happening in the way that it's happening, you know, but we just bought this retreat center that we're trying to fix up and everything. And I never wanted a nunnery because I felt like that was like too binding for me, you know. But, you know, you just never know. One thing I know is that if they decided to come, if all of them decided to come, I have a place for all of them, you know. And so I know some will come, and I may end up with a nunnery here. I might clip my wings just a little bit, but it'll be all right. But it's just being available to the universe for whatever's happening is what's important, you know. And we don't have to think of it as our work or anything. A lot of it we can't plan. We just need to get ourselves ready and to be available when something arises, and we see that we can help, that we step forward in that moment. And when our work is done, we just step back and we go and we do something else. Yeah. So thank you for all your work and your effort today. We're going to go out with a meditation. And I'm going to just start it this one evening.
Before we go into our meditation, I'd like to just speak on one subject. We were, with our last group, we were having a conversation about...
Your mic might not be on, Deepa. I don't think your mic is on.
The green light's on.
Can y'all hear?
It's okay, I'll give them
It's on. It's on.
That's me.
Yeah, you can.
We're good, Joe.
We were speaking about the benefits or the absence of benefits of confrontation and conflict. And I just want to remind everyone about this truth, that hatred never overcomes hatred. And, you know, it's like, well, okay, well, maybe sages said that, and maybe mystics said that, but that can't be true. Well, all we have to do is look at our history, all through written history. We've had wars and conflicts, and we're still having wars and conflicts. In other words, hatred and violence does not end hatred and violence. Only love overcomes hate and violence. Now, I know that's hard for a lot of people to swallow. It's hard for a lot of people to participate in, but it's the truth. Thank you so much.
Position where you feel we can sit for just a little while. Body is erect. Shoulders back, but not too far back, just in a relaxed space that allows the hands to rest up or down on the thigh or on the knee. Head is just being suspended by a string, chin gently tucked in, elongating the spine, but in a very comfortable way. Bringing our focus inward. By intention, shutting the sense gates to the outside world. Holding inward and taking up the breath as an object of meditation. To establish mindfulness in front of us. Like a sawyer saws a log, keeping his eye right there where the blade meets the log. In the same way we breathe in and out, we establish one spot of observation. Like a gatekeeper, counting the people as they enter the city, not caring where they came from or where they go, but just noting when they approach the gate and cross over into the city. In this same way, we observe the object of the breath, breathing in and breathing out, naturally, normally, with awareness. train the mind to note the characteristics, the qualities of the breath. Breathing in long. I understand that's a long breath. And when I breathe in short, compared to the last breath, I understand that's a short breath. Training thus, I shall breathe in, experiencing the whole body of breath. I shall breathe out, experiencing the whole body of breath. I breathe in, transforming and tranquilizing the bodily formation. I breathe out, tranquilizing the bodily formation. I shall breathe in, experiencing rapture. One trains thus, I shall breathe out, experiencing rapture. One trains thus, I shall breathe in, experiencing pleasure. He trains thus, I shall breathe out, experiencing pleasure. He trains, I shall breathe in, experiencing the mental formation, and I shall breathe out, experiencing the mental formation. He trains thus, I shall breathe in, tranquilizing mental formation. I shall breathe out, tranquilizing mental formation. He trains thus, I shall breathe in, experiencing the mind. I shall breathe out, experiencing the mind. one trains thus, I shall breathe in, concentrating the mind. I shall breathe out, concentrating the mind. He trains thus, I shall breathe in, liberating the mind. I shall breathe out, liberating the mind. you want to give some announcements?
Yes.
First of all, thanks to Pannavati and Pannadipa for a wonderful day of practice and wonderful teachings. And then thanks to everyone here for creating the community that we've created today. This has been a wonderful day of practice, I think, for all of us. A couple of announcements, a couple of reminders, and one request for some help. Tomorrow we will be in Dharma, and not here. And then the other reminder is that because Unity will be having their service as well as us having our retreat, if people could park across the street in the parking lot where the Herbs supermarket is, it's across the street about a half a block west of here. The request that we have is that we are going to need to move the cushions back to Shomi Dharma. And we probably need to stack the chairs back in the back. So if folks can help with that, that would be greatly appreciated. So thank you all.
Thank you.
And the one who is bowed to are both by nature empty. Therefore the communication between them is inexpressibly perfect. Our practice center is a net of Indra, reflecting all Buddhas everywhere. And my own person reflects on the Buddhas, to whom with my whole life I go for refuge. Offering light to the 10 directions, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, to whom we bow in gratitude. Teaching and living the way of awareness in the very midst of suffering and confusion, Shakyamuni Buddha, the Enlightened One, to whom we bow in gratitude. I vow to avoid killing living beings. I vow to avoid taking what is not given. I vow to avoid sensual misconduct. I vow to avoid false speech. I vow to avoid malicious speech. I vow to avoid harsh speech. I vow to avoid gossip. I vow to avoid covetousness. I vow to avoid ill will. I vow to avoid wrong view.
Excellent, excellent, excellent.
These are the aspirations that we make to ourselves as practitioners of the Dharma. Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Could you still hear me? Can you, is it okay? Okay. First of all, thank you for coming out in the rain. The rain, that says something for your own commitment to your own practice. Appreciate it. This morning I'm going to approach a very difficult subject to teach because there's so much resistance around this information. And the subject is about non-self. So if you remember yesterday, we worked out of a sutta, a discourse, where the Buddha was teaching his son about how to meditate in a way that would make mindfulness of breathing both of good fruit. And he started out this teaching because Rahula was following behind him and admiring his father and feeling very much like his father and feeling puffed up because he was the son of the ascetic Gautama that was revered by many people in the country. And because the Buddha could read his mind, he turned around and he said to him, he said, Rahula, any kind of material form, whatever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all material form should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom, thus, this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. And Rahula asked his father, only material form, blessed one, only material form? And then the Buddha responded by saying, material form, Rahula, and feeling, and perception, and formations, and consciousness. All right, again, the 5 aggregates of clinging. So I'm going to do my best to introduce this subject today, to dialogue about this subject today. And I hope that everyone is able to grasp something from it all, to begin to unravel the threads, the tanglement of understanding about emptiness or voidness or the absence of self. Non-self. The reason that it is so difficult to even accept the conversation about this subject by individuals, especially those who are just being introduced to the Dharma, those who are just being introduced to the practice, is because there's a strong identification with the aggregates. In other words, how can I not be I? I have mass. How can I not be I? I feel. How can I not be I? I have history. How can I not be I? I think. How can I not be I? I am aware. So, again, form, feeling, perception, history, memory, thinking, and consciousness. So, again, I think we can all agree that some feel right now this resistance to even letting go of the association with those aggregates because they are us and we are them. But I'm going to try to dismantle some of that. I'm going to try to put some cracks in that reality this morning. So, right from the beginning, I want you to just think about, consider those five. Again, form, body, materiality, feeling, perception, thinking, consciousness. And what of these five do you hold on to? I mean, this is just your own personal inventory. What of these five do you hold on to? What of these five do you associate with as you that say validates your individual existence? And as you think about those, I'm going to work. So you can multitask. Right? So let's take form first. And we worked a little bit with form yesterday with the meditation on the elemental meditation, the meditation on air, fire, water, earth, and space as a composite of form. And those, I hope, is there anyone here today who wasn't here yesterday? Great, okay, so all of you, I hope, experienced the fact that as you went in and examined form from that perspective, from the perspective of composition at its base form, at its ultimate truth, and that is, it is only fire, water, air, earth, and space. But in that examination, you did not find yourself. You did not find existence of a person. You found all those things. You dismantled everything. You tore everything apart, but you could not find you. Another way to look at form is this. Are you the same person today, this morning, in this session that you were 20 years ago? Do you look the same? Do you feel the same? Do you think the same? Do you still like Brussels sprouts? Do you still think that man or woman down the street, but it's just a thing to die for? Okay, so we can all agree, there's the consensus that there has been some transformation, there has been some change between the past and right now, that I am different physically, in appearance, in choices and selections and preferences than I was 20 years ago. Okay, how about last week? Are you different than you were last week? Do you have another crease in your face? Do you have another gray hair in your head? Or one gray hair less in your head? So again, in examining our physical form, we can see that we've changed. Where did the person go that was there 20 years ago? Where did the person go that was there yesterday? Who is this that is sitting here today that wasn't sitting here yesterday? Somebody. But it is not the same person. It begins to unravel the belief in this personal identification that transmigrates from world to world, from life to life, from earth to heaven, this idea, this concept that I, as I perceive myself to be today in this moment, is everlasting. I will always be. The point is, how do I wrap my belief around the fact that I will always be when I wasn't what I was yesterday? Do you if I'm not the same that I was yesterday, and I'm not the same that I was last week, and I can agree with that, then how do I feel that I will be the same forever? For all of eternity. Okay. Let's go to something else then. Let's go to feeling, since that one didn't work too well. I am feeling, I am because I feel. I am because I feel. Well, there are these three feelings. See, we're not talking about emotions. We're talking about when a sensescape, a base, makes contact with external reality through consciousness, and the three come together, and there is feeling. And there's this feeling that either I like what I see or hear or smell or taste or touch or feel or think, or I don't like it, or I neither like it nor don't like it. Now again, because there is this choice of expression of feeling, that the same feeling does not always come up and present itself, and the same feeling is not always present, then which feeling are you? You see, am I the good feeling? Am I the pleasant feeling? Well, okay, everybody wants to be the pleasant feeling, but what happened when there isn't pleasant feeling? Where did you go? Right? Who is this person who has the unpleasant feeling? Is that me too? Well, wait a minute, you just said you were the pleasant feeling. How can you be the unpleasant feeling? Are you listening? Okay. The neither pleasant nor unpleasant. How can I be that one too? I've got to make up my mind which one I am. I can't be all three, because that means I change. That means I'm impermanent. That means I'm not stable. That means I'm not static. That means I'm not me as I think I am. You good with that one? Okay. Let's go on to perception. Oh, that's an easy one, perception. Right? What do we remember? How many of you used to be married? Okay. Do you remember how what you remembered never coincided with the other who remembered that same Wednesday what was said, right? There was I get an amen
Somebody
back there. Got an amen back there. All right? But we go to war. You know, we did battles in the kitchen over who was right, over who was correct, over whose perception of memory is appropriately correct and factual. It tells us the illusion of stability and substantiability of things when we can have that much disagreement about what, you know, presented itself in a moment just a little while ago, just yesterday or just last week. that we all have heard, because most of you guys in here are, work with the college or are associated with the college or have been to college, or and we've all heard of these experiments where you have a room full of people and somebody runs across the stage, does something crazy, says something crazy, and runs out, and then everyone is asked what happened, and right in that moment you get 25 different opinions about what happened. So again, it tells you about the unreliability and the fluidity of perception, of memory. The variation of perception. So yeah, it's history. But whose history? Which history? What history am I? Depends upon what book I read. We were talking about the Texas school system and how they want to take slavery out of the textbooks. So it depends upon which book you read, which head you go in, which mind you assess as to which memory you find. So then it's pretty unreliable, in my opinion, to begin to identify myself with perception or memory, because it is so it just isn't absolute enough for me. It isn't reliable enough for me. Thinking. How many times have we changed our mind? So which person am I? The one that used to think this way, or the one who thinks this way now? And as we grow older or more mature or more knowledgeable about ourselves, we realize that the reason that there is backspace keys on computers and erasers on pencils is because I will change my mind very often about the same thing in the same day. Well, which one was doing the thinking? Which one of the I's am I? Consciousness is the sticky one. That's really the one, that whole, well then who is this that's aware that I am thinking about something, or I am watching TV? That must be who I am, that awareness, that consciousness. And the truth is, that has some truth in it. That what all of this is trying to do is to get us out of our body and get us out of our head. Get us out of our memory. Get us away from this limited idea of who we are. To begin to investigate the noumenal side of reality. And see, as soon as we start talking about that side, we misrepresent it. Because you can't even speak about and talk about the unmanifested. The place where the wave and the particle come from. what is a wave and what is a particle when it is existing in the place that gives it birth. You see, we can talk about unlimited potential, but now we've still called it something. You know, we can talk about infinite possibilities, but we've still then objectified it. We've still called it something, and we've pulled it across the line from where it actually is and what it actually is not into something else that we ascribe to, that we design in our own minds, that we believe it is based on everything we know. And how much do we know? Only what we've been exposed to, and how much is that? And when we were exposed to it, how much of our minds and brain did we use to examine what we were exposed to? See, that it starts creeping down, you know, and we thought we knew all. We knew everything about everything. But it tells us to use the technology, to use the practices, to develop our ability to access that space that goes beyond infinite consciousness, that goes beyond nothingness, that goes beyond neither perception nor non-perception. Now I'm going to say that one again. And just try to consider where that might be and who you might be in that realm of formlessness. Neither perception nor non-perception. Neither awareness nor knowledge. So you see that then places us really not outside of that box, but somewhere between the two. Somewhere between eternalism and annihilism. So some groups, some people, even in the Buddhist time, believed that we go on forever, that we just transmigrate. Eternalism. The same goes on forever. Well, we kind of agree a little bit anyway that, well, if I can't find the sameness from day to day, even in this one lifetime, how do I expect it to go on for many lifetimes, forever? It makes you think, and that's all we're talking about here. We're not talking about agreement, we're just saying, hey, think about it. Think about what you say and what you believe. And of course there are those who believe that when you're dead, you're done. The worms eat you, there's no more, it's all over. They were there in the Buddhist time, and they were there today. And it doesn't matter what you do, there are no consequences. Those groups and those thoughts were there in the Buddhist time, and they're there today. But it is not that either. Well, it is not that, but it is not that. So what the teaching is that it's somewhere between those two. It's somewhere in the middle. Neither extreme. It's somewhere in the middle. The best way that I have to describe it to myself, and I'll share it with you, and I'm sure you have a better way than I, but here it is. I see it like a relay race. And I'm running the first leg, and I've got the baton. And I do my best, whatever that might be. So I might be the third one in, I might be the first one in, I might be the last one in. But I pass the baton on. But I don't run the second lane. Someone else does, but it's the same race. And on and on and on and on. And where that different being starts depends upon where I am. So there's a benefit. They don't have to run as hard or they have to run faster. That's common. Now, I'm sure if you think about it, you'll have even better ways to describe how it works. And that's all I want you to do, is think. But come up with something better than they've already come up with. Because what we've done today is to say, well, some of those ideas don't make sense. If I can look at my life, if I can look at my day, even in a day we are born and we die. Even in one day there are many lifetimes that occur. As an example, you wake up in the morning and you feel great, and you've got great thoughts on your head about what you're going to do, and this is just going to be a terrific day. And somebody spills coffee on your presentation. That person who was in a great mood died. They no longer exist. And then there's this angry person in the boardroom that's raising hell with everybody. It's very disgruntled. That person was born. And then when the person who spills the coffee apologizes and runs and makes it all better, then this angry person dies and someone else is born and rises. So when we think about birth and death, we think about womb to tomb. And we are not yet sensitive enough to realize that there are many me's, not many me's, but many me's that exist in one 24-hour period, that come and go, that arise and cease, that are all legitimate and real in their time. But they come and go. So where's the permanent one? Where's the one that dies and doesn't come back anymore? We see a process. We don't understand it because we are misidentifying with it. We just simply believe that it's me that keeps doing all of these things, but how can it be me when I'm not the same that I was? Which me is the real me? That is your assignment. That is what I want you to look for. And that is what I want you to tell me about the next time we get together, whenever that will be. But can we get together the next time?
So I think it's appropriate and useful to take a moment and reflect on this. We like to pride ourselves in what we know and who we are. And to think about abandoning that, can be very disconcerting. It can be agitating. It can be destabilizing. Like, if I'm not me, then who am I? Is the thought that constantly comes up. But if we could understand the necessity to emphasize the self, what a difference it would make in our world. What a difference it would make in our moment-to-moment interaction with each other. Because most of our time is spent defending ourselves, defending my view, defending my property, my territory, my son, my daughter, my money, my reputation, all about mine. I mean, actually, if we didn't have mine to work with, we'd be mighty bored. I mean, like, what would we do with the day if we didn't have this mind? So it's like high up. It's so high up on our list of priorities that, I don't know, it's in the stratosphere. It's so high up that we can't even see it. That's how high up it is. It just becomes like it's just the way it is. And you'd have to be crazy not to be there in full throttle defense of the I. So what we do is we work on other things, like I'm practicing. I've been practicing for 20 years on not being so angry, not clinging to my money, not clinging to my ideas or my thoughts, not clinging to my views, not not clutching and craving and grasping around this and that and the other, when all we have to work on is, the I-ness. If I stop grasping so tightly around the notion of me, then all of the my things that I'm working on, I mean, I could free that energy up to do something useful, useful in the world. And I would lose 99% of my anxiety, because my anxiety, most of my anxiety, a little bit might be around you and your safety, but to tell you the truth, most of it is around me and my safety, and holding on to my possessions and making sure I'm top dog. Because if I'm top dog, you can trust me, but if you're top dog, I'm not so sure I can trust you. And so there's this constant me having to look out for myself and what is mine against everybody. I mean, friends today, but you had some friends, that they're no longer your friends. So you even have to keep your eye on your friends. I have 2 young men that are working for me at the retreat center. They argue all day long. I said, tomorrow I'm going to start docking you, because when you argue, your performance goes down. You think you're working, but mostly you're flapping your hands and saying, "You get my point, dog?" And that's because that's how they talk, and then they're just going back and forth. And I said, that's why all I see is hands flapping and how the youngsters do. And then grabbing their pants and pulling them up. So how about a belt? I have to keep pulling them up every 15 minutes. What's wrong with a belt? So they, so we started talking about this very thing. But what's so wonderful about young people is that they are willing to ponder something. Not quite so vested in everything. They haven't had to put in enough years to be vested, and they're open, more malleable, willing to consider something. Of course, maybe what they were considering is that I was going to start docking them tomorrow. But they did make, but they made an effort.
Carrot and stick.
But they made that. I mean, but they really thought about it, you know. And came. I said, you know what? You all are not friends. I said, you might think you're friends, and you may have been friends at one time, but I can tell you, just from my observation for the month you've been working with me, you all are not friends. Maybe frenemies, but not friends. And I said, and if you all stay this close together, the F part will leave, and you'll just be enemies, you know. But they didn't realize. They didn't realize it. And I said, like, you know, and as I observed, I noticed that, you know, a friend, there are qualities and characteristics of friendship. And if we're confused about it, we should look it up. We should ask somebody, the voice of another, right? Yeah. So we can know what is a friend, what's not a friend. So I started telling them the characteristics of a friend. I said, does that fit y'all's relationship? I said, maybe you were a long time ago, but something has changed, some dynamic. I said, so don't go anywhere else and tell everybody y'all best friends, because it doesn't add up. Now, if you'd like to be best friends, it's going to require a change in attitude, a change in behavior. You can't just go spouting the word, you know. But the word speaks to something alive, in action. And so they've decided that they're not. They came back and they said, well, we don't know what happened. But they started thinking, and then it came up. There was a girl in the picture some time ago, and one felt the other had tried to home in on, you know, on his relationship, or she said the other one did or something. But that bit of mistrust crept in there. And it really forever changed their relationship. So now they're trying to keep, you know, in their mind, they have this notion that they are the same, but they're not the same. But you know, we talked about this for a week straight. And at the end of it, they could agree that they were no longer best friends. That they could agree that they were still friends, but that there were some trust issues. And they could agree that, you know, the relationship as it is evolving is probably a good one for both of them. Maybe not to be quite so close, or trying to be as close as they were in the past. And there was something it was bittersweet, this realization, because they recognized that they were pulling around, carting around something that was dead, pretending that it was alive. And it was sweet too, because there was a freedom, a release from the falseness. You see, a lot of what we talk about, it sounds high and heady and esoteric, and you know, but actually it's sort of like plain old common sense, and like we sort of know it in the back of our head, but we don't want to deal with that, or we don't want to acknowledge it. You know, if I give up my I-ness, you know, actually I like that position. I like that job. If there's two of us and one has to be the I-ness, it should be me. You know, and it makes you recognize me, notice me, you know, kowtow to me, make sure you try to please me, and then, you know, that feels pretty good. But we have to ask ourselves, what do we really want? The thing that makes us feel pretty good is the same thing that causes us all of our suffering, when you don't do all those things that I want you to do. I remember when I used to be on the motivation circuit. There's a lot of money in motivation. People will pay you to pump them up. They really will. They just don't want to do their own work. And, you know, I would come into a city and auditoriums full, 1,000, 2,000 people. And they paid, you know, a week's wages to get pumped up for 45 minutes or an hour. And I would do my job. Because a little motivation is good for everybody, right? But when I walked off the stage and went back to my hotel room, I would look in the mirror and I would cry. I would cry because I knew that what I just told a room full of people that they could do, I knew only a handful had enough wherewithal to do it. I knew only a few. The rest were going to be hyped up, but they were not going to follow through. They either did not have the skills, they did not have the energy, or they did not have the confidence, or they did not, you know, I could go through a whole litany of why they were wasting their money. And I felt like such a hypocrite. And I tried to convince myself that, you know, well, first of all, this is my job. I mean, they're coming to be encouraged, to be, you know. But I didn't give them that little caveat that, you know, most of you are going to walk out of here the same way you came in, or if not, you will be by tomorrow morning. Because you're not that invested in the effort that it's going to take to shift your paradigm. And that's why people come into places like this, or the churches or the synagogues or wherever they gather, and go out, come back the next week, the next month, the next year, the next decade, without much of a change. Forgetful hearers, they call it in the Bible. Forgetful hearers. Because it takes more than just hearing. The pondering. Some say, oh, that stuff just makes my head hurt. You know, I don't want to think that deeply. Remember the Matrix when the guy, you know, like shows him what's really going on in reality. And he's like, oh, too much information, you know, and he decided to go back and pretend, you know, he didn't know. He wanted to go back to sleep. No, but the thing is, we can't go back to sleep. We can't unknow what we know. We can't unrealize what we realize. So now, double suffering. First it was just suffering, but now it's double suffering. So it starts to be like self-flagellation, you know? You're beating yourself up because what you know to do, you don't do. What you don't want to do, you do. But if we could, like, take it and just keep pondering on it, the good news is that after a while, like, it's like if you're trying to knock down a structure, you take that sledgehammer, wham, doesn't even make a dent. Didn't even chip off one iota of the concrete, but you just keep hammering. You keep touching it with that sledgehammer, with that force. And then one day, it cracks. And you just keep touching it. And then one day, it falls down. It breaks apart. It shatters. And that's how we have a paradigm shift. So, not looking so much at looking more at what is possible as opposed to how we actually are. That's the sledgehammer that butts up against our momentary ignorance. And that's what shatters the illusion. So we call it an illusion and shattering that illusion. If the word illusion sounds too woo-woo, then we could say, you know, destroying the ignorance. If that offends your intellect, then we could say seeing your original nature. If that bothers you with this notion that, you know, there's a song we sing. It says, all beings are essentially pure by nature, pure as in shunyata, pure as in emptiness. I too am essentially pure by nature. I'm pure as in shunyata, pure as in emptiness. Just thinking like that behind all of these layers, there is an essential purity, an essential clarity. Every other spiritual tradition that I can think of speaks of great abundance, adding something. But I like the Dharma because it tells me that everything is already there. It's peeling away something. And if we peel away all of our erroneous concepts, all of our half-baked ideas, what's left is full-bodied and pure. But what kind of purity? It says pure as in emptiness. So when we talk about consciousness being, you know, maybe of all the things, I know it's not body, because if you cut me open, you won't find Pannavati in there. I get that. I know it's not feeling, because they go like this. You know, I like this, I don't like this, I like this, I don't like this, all day long. And once you realize that, instead of doing like this, you just sit that stuff out there. And then you can just see it go, you know, like a metronome. And you just watch it go like that. But you're not going like this all the time. It's like that, pushing it away, moving it away, sitting what's in the world, letting it be right there, and then just watching it. So now you don't get dizzy, at least. You know, you might still have there might still be that, because of the feeling that comes with an occurrence, there's that feeling, the feeling of pleasure, or the feeling of pain, the feeling of, and sometimes you just don't care. I mean, like, you're just neutral about it. It's not really affecting you one way or another. It's not pleasant or unpleasant. It's just, you know, it's just there. It's like if I look out the window and I see the wind blowing and moving the leaves, I can think, like it feels like a breath of fresh air, and how beautiful and soothing it is. And I look over at the playground and I see the, whatever that is. What is that? What do you call that thing right there? Slide. Yeah. You know, I haven't been feeling about it at all. You know? So it doesn't move me in any kind of way. It doesn't touch, impinge upon anything, any memory. When I look at the leaf blowing in the wind, I remember how the gentle breeze feels across your face. Something like that triggers for me. But somebody else might look at it and they can remember when they were in a hurricane and they saw the tree going across the front, and it might bring up anxiety for them. You know, I had this affliction at one time that I could not leave the house. I don't know how it started. I don't know what caused it. You know, I didn't, but I found myself having some fear about going outside. I think it started with driving, and I had some fear about driving. Got to a place I couldn't drive anymore. And then it was like I felt some kind of anxiety when I went outside. And then it got so bad that I felt anxiety when I stepped out of my bedroom just to go like into the living room. It was a terrible affliction. It's like running when nobody's chasing you, you know. And I didn't know what caused it, and I didn't know what to do about it, but the aversion, the unpleasantness, and the fear was there. The more I thought about it, the more it grew. And I decided I was going to be, it was like my life was over. That there was nothing that I could do about this. And so my husband at that time, he said, you know, the only one who's going to be able to break this is you. And he said, but you're going to need a friend. He said, I'll be a friend for you. He said, can you trust me? I said, I do. He said, you know, it's a good thing we had a bathroom in our bedroom. So, so he took my arm one day. He said, we're going to try. We're going to step across this threshold, you know. And I got up to the door. And as I lifted my foot, I tell you the truth, as I went across the threshold, it felt like a laser cutting off my foot. But the thing is, I knew it wasn't a laser cutting off my foot. I knew that it was a ditty, that's what they call it, like a wrong thinking in the mind. And as the tears streamed, because I physically felt pain, I allowed him to lead me across that threshold. So it's good to have a good friend. And I made it out of that room. And we took a few steps, and I wanted to go back. I felt like I was like just falling apart, disintegrating inside. And we went back into the room. And I sat there all day looking at that doorway, like my freedom was on the other side. I could see it if I had the courage to run through it and just cross that threshold. So one day, I think about it every day. This went on for months. But one day, I got up all by myself. I took a deep breath, and I crossed that threshold. And I tell you, I didn't like just stick your, you know, if you have to run through the fire, you're going to run through the fire. You're not going to just take your time. So that's how crossing that threshold had to be for me. I had to build myself up until I was ready. I'm going to do this thing. And I ran out that door and crossed over into that living room. And it was just a little bit of tinge from that fire of the threshold. And I went to the window and I looked out. Then I walked all over my house, and I had a really nice house at that time, and I walked all over my house. It felt so good I didn't want to go back in the bedroom because I didn't want to get trapped back in there. So I stayed out all day long until he came home. And he was so shocked I didn't call him anything like, oh, come and look and see him. But nothing. I just enjoyed my freedom, and I knew I had done it. Myself that I had overcome my own mind. Now, so when the Buddha says, if you don't get some of these things, you know, he gives us like the antidotes to the habits that beset us. And you know, before this established itself so strong, it was some kind of an inkling, some kind of an uncomfortable feeling, you know, that I got. But the more I allowed that, and the more I leaned into that, the more powerful it got, until it completely took over my psyche. And this is how habitual patterns of thinking or looking at something. So there may be something in your life that's not that issue. But I mean, that's an extreme. That's why I share with, I have so many extremes in my life. I tell you, if I'm not about to have a breakthrough before this life is over, I gotta be close, because I can't come up with more stories than I have. And they're really true stories, you know. So that's where the courage comes from. That's where the strength comes from. It comes from overcoming the ignorance. And when you've overcome it yourself, you know something. So if somebody's talking to you about something else, they're only talking about what they don't know about, because you have proven it directly for yourself. And we're always talking like, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Where's the proof of something? You know, but facts tell and benefits sell. It would always tell us that. So a fact is just a fact. Fact doesn't really have a lot to do with things. But when things affect you in a living way, you know, and that's what the Buddha pointed to. He pointed to direct experience. So we all have these kinds of experiences, you know. And he says, look right there. We're busy trying to find something out here and looking at these things out here to maybe help you better. But he says you don't have to go any further than your own experience. No, any further than what's happening moment by moment in your life. You don't have to go any further than your next engagement with a person. You don't have to go any further, you know, than the next task that you have to do. You don't have to go any further than wherever you are seeing something around you, because the Dharma is everything. And you can learn something from everything that happens in your life. So we already know. Nobody has to tell us about this clinging to me, mine is suffering. We already know that it's suffering. We already know that when we come into a relationship with someone and we take the vow till death do us part, if it came down to me having to die to let you go, you know, I'm not down for that. You know, but yeah, we say it anyway. And if I really like you to the end, then I want to hold you to that. But if I don't like you to the end, you know, then I don't want you to hold me to that. It's just something we say, though, because it sounds so romantic. It looks so good. And at the moment, I'm thinking, you know, I want to live my whole life with you. But when I keep growing and you don't, or when you start changing and I'm not changing, I don't want you to change because I don't want to change. You know, that's the reality of life, no matter what we say. We say these things and we don't even believe them. But then when the truth comes, because we don't want to put forth the effort to walk in it, then we come up with all our yeah buts. So I think the Dharma just reminds us, you know, of our essential nature. I like that, pure as in emptiness. I started by saying if you cut me open, you won't find Pannavati. You might find something, blood and muscle and tissue and bone and so forth. If you cut any of that open, you won't find the same thing inside. It starts breaking down smaller and smaller, you know. You get cells, you get, I don't know, atoms, you get quarks, and I think quarks were the last thing they had discovered when I was in school, but I know they have things a lot smaller than quarks now, you know. And then you come to something that can't even be divided or defined. Emptiness. So if we think of how we approach life, like a glass of clear water, you could like see straight through it. It's something like that. And something is said, something is experienced. It's like needles are painful. Needles have always been painful for me. Now I have diabetes and I have to, you know, give myself shots. And when they brought out that needle, I'm like, no, you're going to have to come up with something else. No, I went saying, okay, doc, you know, for 5 years or 7 years or something, he's been saying, let me put you on a little oral medication, kind of stabilize that. And I'm like, I don't want any of your allopathic stuff. I'm like, no. And then finally, I'm feeling so bad here, you know, I go and I say, okay, doc, I'm ready. Go ahead and give me some pills. He said, darling, you are so far beyond pills. You know? And then he pulls out this needle. I'm like, I can't do it. You know, and even now that I am doing it, and I tell you the truth, the needle doesn't even hurt. But every single time I give myself an injection, 5 times a day, I look at that needle, and, you know, like, sometimes I just give it to myself in the thigh. That's easy. And I have to, like, 1, 2, you know, in the mind, because I have planted in there already about needles are painful and all of that. And then when I stick it in, and I'm like, that's a pain. Now this has been, I don't know, 2 months. And 2 months has not overcome a lifetime of believing that needles are painful and that this is going to hurt when I stick it in my thigh. Even though I've done it 4 or 5 times a day for 2 months. Every single time. It takes a long time to dispel ignorance. So I say to you, don't give up when you hear things that you can't comprehend or that you can't really accept or that you know is true, but you can't walk in it right now. You don't give up. I decided that this is not so bad, having to give myself this needle. That's not the best, but I can do it. And so for the first time, I'm making the effort to stay on some protocol. You know, before it was like, I can't take the vitamins every day, you know. I can't take, you know, just these little things. Now I got to do this, and I'm finding, hey, I can do this. I can do this every day. I can do this 5 times a day. And so we change as to what we're able to accommodate according to what we really want in our life. I mean, like, how free do you want to be? That's the question. How free do you want to be? We're deciding all the time. I want to be kind. I want to be loving. You know, I want, but to what degree do I want that? What happens when there's one job and it's 2 of us, you know, vying for it? I heard a story yesterday of someone who, that very situation came up. And she opted to retire so that the other person could have a job, because otherwise she had seniority and she would get the job. But she knew the other person needed the job. No, this is what this teaching inures to in real life. What I will do in real life in that moment. Will I be selfing, or will I look at a situation and decide with pure equanimity and impartiality what is the best course of action for me to take in this situation? That's where the rubber meets the road. Not our talk. But when we can make those kinds of decisions in real time. And when we can make them, a certain confidence comes up. Yeah, I'm on the path. I am on the path. I'm not reading about the path. I am on it. And we think that it costs something. Like maybe that price is too high to pay. But I tell you, once you get on the path to do anything other than what the path shows us we have the capacity to do, costs us something. There is an integrity that's established in us that allows us to fulfill our true heart's desire. And that's where the happiness comes from. That what I would do, I do. And what I don't want to do, I don't do. That's what we're striving for. When he says, here's the sum total. Cease from doing evil and do good. That's really short and sweet. And if you do that, you'll be happy with yourself. Because the action inures to contentment. No longer worrying about, how when you do something and it wasn't the best thing to do, but that's where I was at the time, that's all, And you think about it for 20 years, having no regret, because you just couldn't do that, the thing that you knew was the right thing to do, or the compassionate thing. You couldn't, you just couldn't step over that threshold, And you have regrets. And maybe nobody even knew, this action that came up in you to take, but you couldn't do it. Nobody knew. So you're neurotic and nobody knows why. Nobody knows why, but you know why. Because you went against your own self. You went against your own purity. That's what this is about. How to walk in our own purity and how to walk in that kind of emptiness that allows the right action to arise spontaneously in the mind and in the heart, and to just do that. I don't give money to every person I see on the street. But if I'm passing somebody and that thing spontaneously arises, I act just like that. I start scrambling for my bag. Sometimes I'll pass a person and it does not arrive. But it's just this development of empathy, this development, this continuity of consciousness, maybe. And you just know how to respond. And when that comes up, just do it. Just doing it. Don't even think about it. The more you think about it, the mind that's designed, to protect the eye will say, because when it comes up, also an amount comes up. It's like give them $20. go buy some wine with it. But, you know, and then the mind starts like whittling that number down. You know, but if the first number popped up, if it was $50, if it was $20, if it was $1, and then, you know, and just learning how to operate out of that, training yourself to be spontaneous in that moment. Before the selfing came and like, you know, and then after a while you find yourself spontaneously generous, and it just gives you joy to peel off something. It gives you joy, and then it's not just about money. It gives you joy to do something. It gives you joy to say something delightful to somebody. Because it gives you joy to look at somebody's eyes. I mean, really seeing them. Not like passing a buck through the window, there you go. You know, but really looking at them. I say, I see you. You know, something like that. Really connecting in some kind of way. When the one tries to set up an obstacle in your life, and to be able to look at them like, I see you. Not like I see you, but like, I see you, you know. And it like breaks down something. Even if you lose in that encounter, that person leaves with that stab of truth that works on, works on, works on. And even if you don't receive the benefit of that work, somebody else will. Somebody else will. So just being the one willing to be the setup for somebody else to inherit something good. Like one planting, another watering, another getting the increase. Thinking like that. Not like I have to plant it and it's for me and mine. But just not sowing wild oats, I guess, a wrong idea. But just planting, not worrying about the harm. So that's a way to take this, the way the Buddha breaks things down so that we can see them. And we don't leave them all broken down. We put it back together, and then but when it comes back together, we understand things in a little different way. Yeah? And we're able to use it in life so that our presence becomes a benefit. Or just so that we can become present because we've been walking around with blinders on. Or we've been afraid to cross that threshold. You know, what will my friends think? Or we've been afraid to cross that threshold because it means I have to change. Well, you're changing anyway, whether you like it or not. So, which way do you want to go? Why not lean in to the good? I can't do that neck thing those young ones do, you know. Yeah, it's like that. Why not lean in to the good? And the way to that is when we talk about forgetting about the self. That seemed too sacrificial, you know. So the Buddha approaches it in a different way, in a very scientific and rational way. So you can take it from that way all the way to this, this simplified way of looking at no man is an island, no man stands alone. That's the bottom line. And if you want to live in this world with other people, and you want to be happy with them. I had a young man, he was the director of one of my organizations, and he left his change bag in the car. and he told me, he said, I had a really good day today. He made bagels and he sold them. And he said, and he had something like $2,000 in his it's like a lunch box, you know, one of those, like a little toolbox or something. And he came in the store and he was talking and he said, I made all of this money. And then there was an item and he wanted to buy it. He said, oh, let me run out to the car and get the money. It was a piece of equipment, but I was selling and he needed it for his little shop. And he came in and he said, you know, I left it on the seat and I forgot to lock the door. He said, so somebody took it. He said, oh, well, I should have locked the door. He said, I'll bring you a check for it tomorrow. I mean, and that was it. He took total responsibility. He didn't say those thieves, those, I mean, no, he took, I said, oh, what a Buddhist. You know, he wasn't a Buddhist, but he was a Buddhist. I said, oh, what a Buddhist. I said, he did better than I could do. I would have started, oh, I'm so unworthy, I should have locked the door. I would have started with me and it would have gone on to you. But he just said, oh, I left it on the seat and forgot to lock the door. He says, well, I hope they use it for something good. And he was through with it. He wasn't giving that any more energy. You know, then he loaded the piece of equipment in the car and he was looking for a bungee cord to strap it down. And what did he find? He had put it under the seat before he got out of the car. And that's what it was. And he came running back in, oh, I've got the money. You know, I put it under the seat. He said, and he laughed. You know, but I looked at that, whether it was calamity, you know, or whether it was, you know, a boon. It was all the same to him. And I so admired that young man. In that moment, I said, he is my teacher. Yeah. So I like us to take a break now. It's 10:30. If we can stretch and then, yes.
Can I make an announcement?
Yes, please.
If everybody could just move their cushion and their chair forward about 6 inches, you might be able to let the folks who've just turned up have a spot.
First, I'd like to sort of seal this morning with some expression by Wayne, which was he was a British scholar and student of Oriental philosophy. And it says, he wrote, it should make no difference whether we dispose of self or other. See, again, understanding that in creating a self, and creating a me, then I automatically create the other. And that's the whole dynamic of conflict and confrontation and fear and selfishness. It says it should make no difference whether we dispose of self or other, for the disposal of either eliminates both. The Master said, stop thinking, for then neither self nor other exists any longer. The expression to cease thinking means to stop thinking from a self. For pure thought, absolute thought, direct thought, the one thought, is what thought is when there is no thinking. Right, does that make sense to everyone? Great. For those of you who are Vipassana practitioners, mindfulness practitioners, one of the qualities, one of the factors of mindfulness, in addition to being present in the moment, is to being present with bare awareness. And I'd like to read this explanation of what I think explains bare awareness very well. It says, perceiving a coil of rope as a snake is a delusion. Ceasing to perceive snake leaves the perceiving of the coil of rope what it is. Perceiving a coil of rope as a coil of rope is still delusion. Ceasing to perceive a coil of rope as a coil of rope leaves the perceiving of the coil, of the supposed coil of rope, whatever the supposed coil of rope might be. Think about it.
We're not supposed to think.
That's the quandary. Okay. So, what we'd like for you to do today is to work on the same exercise that we worked yesterday. And the reason that I'm as insistent today as I was yesterday about everyone committing to that practice and working it every day for 30 days is because this morning, when I walked into your meditation center, one of the participants from yesterday came up to me and said, you know, yesterday I was about to get angry. And I thought about what we practice. And I thought about the schematic that I made about my habitual tendencies and the antidotes to those habitual tendencies. And in that space of consideration, I made the decision not to get angry. And this is how it works, and this is what it is, and this is the benefit and the gift of the Dharma and the practice. It makes us take that breath and pause before we make the choices and before we enact the volitions that then require that we say we're sorry. She said, I did it. I chose not to get angry. Thank you. Again, remembering that in the Buddha teaching his son the meditation practices, he said, develop meditation on loving kindness. For when you develop meditation on loving kindness, any ill will be abandoned. Develop meditation on compassion. For when you develop meditation on compassion, any cruelty will be abandoned. Develop meditation on altruistic joy. For when you develop meditation on altruistic joy, any discontent will be abandoned. Develop meditation on equanimity, for when you develop meditation on equanimity, any aversion will be abandoned. Develop meditation on foulness, for when you develop meditation on foulness, any lust will be abandoned. Develop meditation on the perception of impermanence, for when you develop meditation on the perception of impermanence, the conceit I am will be abandoned. So, these are some of your antidotes. And if everyone's ready, we will go inside and staff. Working with your habitual unwholesome behavior and transitioning that to something that is wholesome and good may happen as quickly as tomorrow, like the person who came to me this morning. You might start seeing it, but you might not. You might develop stillness and concentration quicker than you develop discernment and wisdom. You might develop discernment and wisdom quicker than you develop concentration and stillness. You might develop them both quickly, or you might not develop either one of them quickly. But the point is that what you should do, and what I suggest that you do, is to always be present with an eye on transformation. Not quick, not slow, but just the fact that something is changing within you, some dynamic, something that you used to do that you don't do anymore, something that you used to grab onto that you don't grab onto anymore. And then you will realize that you are the agent, you are the effectual agent in making change and in manifesting quality in your life, in your relationships. And that's empowering in itself. When you go outside and look up, what do you see? Okay.
Depends on
I see
what's
blue
there.
and I see white. Sky and clouds are concepts. They're post-its that we put on something and on an object so that we can differentiate between that object and that object. Follow me? So for instance, going back, ceasing to perceive the coil of rope as a coil of rope leaves the perceiving of the supposed coil of rope, whatever the supposed coil of rope might be. So we began to develop the ability to look deeper in our understanding, seeing things at a deeper level in our understanding, seeing that it's not a rope. What is a rope? A rope is a concept. And when I begin to look at that, I see twine, or I see fiber, and I see whatever it is that's on the next level of composition, but I don't see rope. And I look down further and I don't see what I thought I saw on that level. So when we get back then to self-identification and identifying the other, we also realize that what we see is just an imputation, it's just a conception, it's just a conceptualization. It's a post-it, it's not real. And therefore we are able then to manage our relationship with it in a different way, in a softer way, in a kinder way, in a better way. Because again, as Pannavati has been saying through the whole retreat, everything is essentially empty and void. This is why we can sometimes be angry at it and sometimes not be angry at it. If it were substantial and true in and of itself, then we could never be but one way with it. And it would never be but one way with us. But it isn't that way, because it isn't that way. It is really our world. It is really what we make it to be. And it is all mind-made. It's what we think. So, you've got the power. We've given you the key to the kingdom. And it's up to you as to whether you want to keep it in your pocket or always use it. It's now up to you. Thank you so much.
So we want to open up now for some Q&A or comments or observations. You know, sati, the word, the root word in mindfulness, sati, is to remember. So the Buddha encourages us to reflect often. So a lot of times in our, you know, he indicated 40 different meditation objects and the different modes of reflection. So we've covered a number of them in this one, you know, two-day retreat. From how to approach mindfulness of breathing so that it is of good effect and good benefit. You know, remembering the saw and the sawyer, and so that we can really bring our awareness to a sharp laser focus. That's useful because when we're in a situation where we're dealing with something and the mind just starts scattering, you know, and it just starts going jumping all over the place, and you can't be steady, or, you know, we talk about mob mentality. It's like you go there with one intention. I'm going to hold my poster, you know, making my voice be heard. I'm going to be civil and nonviolent, and somebody starts fighting and shoving, and somebody shoves you and you shove them back, and next thing you know, y'all are beating each other with the peace poster. And and that's just not having the stability of mind, you know, to stay concentrated and on your point when the energies of other minds are moving all around. You find yourself caught up. We find ourselves caught up in things that we never intended to get into. You know, I'm just going to have a conversation with her about that thing that happened yesterday. You know, we're just going to talk. I'm going to share. You know, and I start, you know, with my idea of sharing, you know, how I felt about that. And she, like, sort of didn't get it. So I have to help her, you know, and I'm a little bit more forceful at it. And the next thing you know, there is no space for peace and a harmonious resolution, each fighting for their view, their opinion, their side of the story. Well, I just wanted her to get my side. So in these ways, we will learn to be more aware of what our true agenda is. You know, so we have painted this picture about ourselves, you know, that and we stick with that even when we're devolving, you know. But this will help us to be honestly with ourselves in that moment, right where we are, and knowing that we can choose to do something different, even if for a minute, ooh, owie, it's gonna hurt, you know, like when somebody's yelling at you and you're thinking, like, for 2 cents, she better step back, you know, and you're thinking that in your mind, and suddenly you can just allow her to rant, like, poor thing, she's just lost her mind. And you just let her rant, and when she finishes, you can say, thank you for sharing. Or you can even say, you know, I realize how deeply this has affected you, and that was not my intention. But could you really say that in the heat of her affronting you in that way? It's very difficult. Even if that's the truth, you can't say it at that time, you know, because you're battling this coming at you. But these practices will help you to stay self-contained, stay on your own point, stay on your own good foot. And when someone else is raging, you don't have to, you know, become a banshee too. When they're raving, you can, and they've lost their mind for a moment, you don't have to lose yours. That's the thing. That's what's so empowering about this. That developing that concentration, that ability to hold the mind steady, even when an unpleasant feeling is arising, even when a fear that's coming from I don't know where is arising, even when you've told yourself it's no reason to be afraid or to feel anxiety, and yet, you know, it's looming, it's growing larger and larger. Well, if you don't know where it's coming from, you don't know why it's arising, it's not tied or tethered to anything you can identify, then there's nothing to work through. You just have to be with the feeling. So it's like this feeling is arising. It is mighty unpleasant. But the good thing about unpleasant feelings is they don't stay, they don't last, they are impermanent too. So if I can go through my 10-second count, or I can go through this one moment of this unpleasant feeling, it's not going to kill me. I can do this. It's called crushing mind with mind. You know, the Buddha says you try this, you try abandoning, you try abstaining, you try applying the opposite, the antidote, you try this and restraining, you try, he gave a list of 7 or 8, you know, different actions that we can take in the moment. And when all those fail, just crush mind with mind, like get on with it, you know. And so if we're stronger than we think. And the good news is that we're not captive to the world, even though, yes, we are in the world. And we no longer have to rely on the world doing or responding, doing what we want or responding in a certain way for us to remain okay, to be stable, to be secure. It's the security comes from inside, and it's how we train the mind. And when we train the mind aright, it lines up with the heart. That's how you know, you know, sometimes the heart wants to do one thing and the mind is saying, like, count up the cost, like, do you really want to do this, you know? But the more we bring them into correspondence, the more there's this perfect aligning. And then we can do an action, and we can do it in our full confidence that this is the right action for me to do at this time. You know, it's the best that I know to do. And we can do it even if it's not the best. If our skillfulness wasn't, you know, 100%, we know that the intention was right, and we can be at peace. We will continue to work at it. And there was a time I couldn't even go this far with you or with this situation, but now I can. We can know we drop out of sentimentality in the sense of this, you know, wishing something was something and it's not that. We can face things as they are, you know, and we can take an appropriate action, even when we know that there's going to be momentary discomfort with that action. Instead of that instant gratification, like I just need to feel good right this minute. You know, I'll deal with that later. But right now, I'll take this road, this path, or make this decision because I need to feel better. The thing is that generally when we are doing that, we know we're not even feeling better, even at that time. Even, it's like sad songs say so much. So my lover leaves me and I put on this sad song, like sad song making me feel worse, you know, and yet I'm singing, you know, my husband that left me, and yeah, and instead of just moving forward, we have a tendency to roll around in our suffering. And it's so strange, you know. That's why we keep talking about things that people do to us. Why you want to talk about that? They did it to you. That was bad enough. Now you just tell 10 people, you know, and you keep telling the story. And as you're telling the story, you know, you just keep, they stabbed you once, you stabbed yourself 9 times. And, you know, and you just keep repeating it and repeating it and repeating it and bringing yourself more and more suffering. So these are like habitual tendencies we have. This is how the I-ness, you know, stays alive. And in abandoning that, you know, I can't wait to get to work to tell what somebody did, you know, to tell the story. I gotta have somebody, gotta call somebody on the phone. They're not even here, you know. So this happened. I gotta find somebody to call and tell them. Well, why? It already happened once. Why does it have to happen again and again and again? You know. So dropping the drama, you know, and accepting things that good and not so good, that happen in our life and not making a story around them, not reinforcing them, not entrenching it, you know, in our psyche, not making it the news of the day. If it's not so good, then definitely don't tell it. If you need to get advice, go to the best person you think that you can think of that can give you advice. Don't pick 10 mediocre people. Go to the best one that you know. So you only have to tell the story one more time. You know, it's something like that. You know, don't go to one that's having the same problem. She can't help you. Don't go, you know, really thinking about how we love our drama and how we reinforce our own suffering. That's what I'm talking about. And, you know, sometimes it just takes a heads up. Like, you see that right there? And so we're making this shift. We're making this. And then, you know, our happiness comes from this. You know, our happiness comes from not repeating the story. Our happiness comes from not continually dwelling on it. You know, we do have to think about things. But if we've thought about it and we can't come up with a solution, you know, then stop. Just, it's no point. Just keep hopping on that. You know, maybe you just move the mind to something else. Move the mind to something else. And when you move the mind to something else, it frees up that tension, that tightness around it, and as the mind becomes detached and more expansive. Sometimes a good idea comes, like I was so upset that that person who wasn't good to me has the nerve, after not being good to me, has the nerve to leave me, adding insult to injury. But once that mind stops attaching, that was like good riddance, sayonara, and so we learn how to move through the issues of life in this way, where before they were so devastating to us. You know, we find that we can like just handle them and it doesn't take away our joy. Our joy actually increases because we're not tightened around everything. I used to love to fish, and when I became a Buddhist, that's one thing about being a Buddhist that was difficult for me, because I did not, you know, it didn't compute. I did not equate it, you know, to killing living things. I mean, killing living things is, for me, is like you take a gun and shoot something. Fishing, I mean, we fish to eat, to live. I mean, I had all of my reasons why I should be allowed to fish. And I loved every part about it. I loved stringing, you know, my line and putting on my hook and casting, you know, and the drag that I felt in the water. I mean, like, all the different parts of it. And not, you know, just actually catching the fish wasn't even that important. It was like the whole activity, being out. I just loved it. And so I decided, okay, so I will give up fishing. And it wasn't until I gave up fishing that I realized how really cruel I was. Like, if we caught the wrong kind of fish, we're fishing for blues, and we get like this kind of crusty looking, it's called, I don't know its real name, but it's called the ugly fish. You know, and it's crusty and has barnacles on it. And one of those get on your hook, and they have a lot of rows of teeth, so you can't even untangle it, you know. So you have to like cut the thing, and they would just be upset because the crusty fish now cost me a hook. You know, these kinds of things. I mean, that's what I mean. You know, I understand how people do things like have to go to war, and there's something around survival, and before they know it, they've lost themselves, they've lost their humanity. I could say I lost my humanity, you know, just fishing, you know, because, and then when you caught a fish, you take it off the hook, and sometimes if you know, we cheated, so we had this instrument to let you know where the schools were. I mean, you don't want to sit out there all day and night. So you get this instrument to let you know when there's schools of fish, and you drop your hook. As soon as you drop your hook, a fish is on it. So, you know, and you couldn't hardly get them off fast enough to you know, to just keep dropping your hook. And you take the fish off, and you throw the fish on the deck, and you just drop that hook again. That fish is flopping around, gasping for life. Gasping for life. Then after a while, you see the little bubbles start coming, losing its life. I didn't think about it except, that blue's going to taste good in the pan tonight. That was as far as my consciousness went with that. Me, a loving person, but around that issue, too blind to see. But after I made this aspiration that to refrain from killing living, I'm still working on a mosquito, but but I mastered the fish, you know, and suddenly I was no longer blind, and I saw that fish gasping for, I guess gasping for water, you know, because they breathe water or whatever. And I remember the time that I almost drowned, and I was gasping for air. And I was no different than this fish. And I said, boy, I have some karma because I've killed many a fish without even a thought. But anyway, so I gave up fishing. And I'm like, I'm so proud of myself, I gave up fishing. So I go to the, I forget the name of it's an arcade. And they have a fishing machine. And no, so it's not real fish. It's this little thing in water flowing around, and you can cast your net, and it gives the simulation of the drag and everything, and the hook. And you know, it was a skill. You know, it was a skill in the hook. And one day, it was like the only like little bit of recreation that I have, because we like give up a lot of stuff. And I was just telling Pannadipa, I had gone with my children had come to visit, and we'd gone to Dave and Buster's. And I was telling Pannadipa about it. He said, you know, you might as well be fishing. And I thought about it, because the whole energy, the whole intention, the glee I got from outsmarting him when he was trying to get away from my worm, everything was still right there. And that's the day I gave up playing that game. And so we find ways to do the same thing a different way. That's the cunning and craftiness of our mind. So I say to you, as you're looking, reflecting on your true aspiration, your great wish, see that and see how to use it in a different way. The self-serving mind, the self-seeking mind, and take our thoughts a little deeper than we take them. Pondering deeply what you do in certain situations. You know, the precepts that the monastics take, you know, sometimes, that's for monks. You know, that's like this idea. Or the Buddha was talking to monks. Well, actually, they were monks. I mean, we've created a priestcraft over 2,000 years, but they weren't like that, you know. It was just ones who wanted to go deeper into that love walk, who wanted to go deeper, and who the light of the world had dimmed. You know, like there's so many parties, you know, it's only so many partners you can have, there's only so many children you can have, there's only so much money, it's only so many houses, it's only so, you know, it's just, and after a while some of these things start to fall away. Then what? Then we start really thinking about the nature of life. We start looking at our lives. Oh, we have midlife crisis, you know, because we're like, after 50 years, this is it? This is it? What is the purpose? You know? And, you know, I never got to a purpose. But what I got to is, well, even if no purpose, now that I find myself here, what's the highest and best use of my life? How can I seize the essence of a precious human life? And we start thinking about things like that, you know. And so as you start thinking about things like that, that's when you're ready for this path. The Buddha said, this is hard to see. It's hard to understand. There's to be a drawing for something more than how to be happy without things, something more than looking out here for momentary satisfaction and the insecurity that comes with it being out here? How can I find something in here, self-contained, contained within my own being? How can I find contentment here, regardless of what's happening out there? It doesn't mean that something's not happening, no, but it doesn't have to determine what I will do or how I will be in the world. When we have our children, we like to see them grow up, and our great wish for them is that they excel in life, that they become better people than we are. They become more successful around all the things in life that matter. That's our great aspiration. And yes, this walk is that same way. You know, that we finally realize that we want to become better. There is something inside that tells us we can be better. And as we start finding that betterment, there is a happiness and a joy that start, and a contentment that starts to come, even if we're never perfect, even, you know, but just on a daily basis, we're content with life. And when I'm content with me, you know, I'm like the little Junior Marie boy, nobody bothers me. When I'm content with myself, you don't bother me. And when I'm insecure within myself, I take it out on you. And so knowing that helps us. Every time we rely on ourselves, we take a little bit of anxiety, our anxiety, out of the world. We cut a little bit of that mob mentality, because I'm part of that mob. Once we get together, we're a mob, and we have our own mentality. But once I take mine out, it makes the atmosphere a little less frantic. 2 take theirs out, 5 take theirs out, 20 take theirs out. And then you're just in an environment that's copacetic, because all of our craziness is not there. So we did a meditation, a mindfulness of breathing, and we learned how to focus and steady ourselves on one object. After a while, if you continue with that practice, it's not just about applied and sustained thought. There becomes a unification of mind, and then the thinking falls away. So we start with thought, because the mind is running like this, thinking, thinking, thinking. But then it begins to tranquilize. It begins to settle down. And when it does that, then thought stops. He said we come to the absolute stilling of thought. I want to tell you, it is a truly sublime state of suspension when all thinking stops. So could you see the difference between talking, even talking about good stuff, and silence? It's such a different quality. So it's like that with thinking and the stilling of thought. Because even when you're quiet, when you're not talking, you're still thinking, you know. But imagine coming to the absolute stilling of thought. It is such a liberation. And as often as we do that, when we activate the thought again, after some time of sitting, like in meditation, you know, you almost like can't kick it in gear. You know, you almost like don't want to talk. You don't want to, you know, you just don't want to bring all of that back. It was like, just leave me for a minute. Just let me enjoy that space. It gets like that, and your life takes on that kind of quality. And you'll run from a confrontation instead of having one because you have to win the argument. You know, you'd rather let them be right and enjoy the peacefulness. But you have to taste it to want it. You know, once you taste it. So this week, as you go about your business, practice that kind of mindfulness of breathing. practice applying the antidote when you see something, you know, when you react in a certain way. He said, you know, think about a thing, and make sure that it's the right thing to do at this time, that you know, before you do it. He says, think about what you're going to say before you say it. You know, while you're saying it, think about it again. Am I saying what I intended to say? You know how you start. You plan to say something, but depending on what kind of energy you get, it gets a little, it turns in some kind of way, you know. And if you met with kindness, it comes out kind. Or you may have intended to, like, just get something straight, and the person's so kind when you come to you, like you feel guilty, like, and you're kind in what you're gonna say now, maybe you decide you're not even gonna say it. They come at you in a different way, like, yeah, and then you just like, let them have it, you know. So it's you know, causes and conditions, but when you continue to practice in this way, you know, he says, when you start to say something, and you've already thought about it, and yes, it should be said, and you're the one who should say it, and you should say it now, and you have, you know, determined the skillful way to say it. And so while you're saying it, ask yourself the question again, you know. And then if I find now that while I'm saying it, because of the energy that I've met, or because I just stubbed my toe on the way in, you know, now it's not coming out right in that benevolent way, that, or neutral way that I had planned to say it. He said, then stop right there. Yeah. And he says, after you say it, reflect again. So before, during. When you're doing something, reflect. Before doing it, while you're doing it, after you do it. Those are the intermediary steps we take in changing our patterns, changing our habitual tendency. If you gossip, you say, I'm going to stop talking about it because it really hurts people. And you get at the water fountain and they're gossiping, and you can't go to the water fountain, can't not go, because you know they gossip there. And if you don't show up, they'll be talking about you. So you go to the water fountain, and you find yourself caught up in the conversation, and you can just, excuse me, I'm gossiping. And you turn and walk away. Now, it might cost you something, you know, but you decided. You decide. And if someone is, you have a discussion with someone about an issue and you all see it two different ways, and you're just quietly explaining, or, you know, neutrally explaining how you see it, and they see it differently, and yeah, but the yeah buts start on both sides, and it starts, you know, escalating into something else, you know. At what point can you cut it off? What point can you restrain yourself? You know, this right there, recognizing this has gone someplace I didn't want it to go. Can you stop right there? Because he had the last go. So he said something last, it's your turn now. And can you forego coming with your rebuttal to his rebuttal? Can you say, you know, I'm selfing. You know, I've moved beyond a place that I can, like, rationally talk about it. Can we talk about it again? Can I take some time to reflect on what you've said? Can I take some time to think about my position again? Can we walk away from here right now at a truce? I would really like that. Can you say those kinds of things? You know, you'll find that you can say them if you really want to. Push through your fear of, well, now I'm just going to be a doormat if I say that. You know, push through those kinds of fears. All the signals we get, all the messages we get out here talk about being tough, being strong, being, you know, it's all about force, force, force. That's the signal we get. It's not your fault that you're thinking constantly about force, force, because that's beaming in from everywhere, from the billboard to the radio station to the commercial. Excess, get more, need more, want more, feel better if you do this. All of these signals that we're getting. So someone's going to be cutting back on some of the things that we take in, you know. But we're not going to be able to cut everything away. So know that something is beaming, and when that beams, if you just make a mental note, that's not the way I want to go, that's not the way I want to think about, that's not the way I want to do it, then you're counteracting. You don't have to have a petition to take down the sign, you know. You could just look and say, you know, that's not the way I feel about it. I don't think that inures to peace, you know. So in that way, you're neutralizing that signal, not wanted here. And before you know it, you'll be changing in little ways, and you will see it, you will recognize it in your sense of contentment and happiness. Other people will recognize it for sure, and your life will change. Thank you so much for all of your efforts today. Anybody want to say anything?
Two more groups to do. 2 more groups? You might be able to say.
Well, because it was, yeah, I know we did. But because it was raining outside, we decided to do the meditation with everybody instead of the group. So there was a third group that we had planned to do today, and we used up the time. Aren't we supposed to?
Yeah, but we could go.
Yeah, we had used up the time because the weather wasn't good, and we went another way with it. But I tell you, you didn't miss anything, because all we did in the group was we said if anybody had a question about something, they could express that question. And in this one big group, you could do the same. So if you didn't meet in a group yesterday and you have a question, now's your chance. Or you have a comment, or you have an observation, or whatever you would have asked in a group of 8, you can ask in a group of 38.
I wanted to make a comment on your notion of the I-ness, or its minus. To deconstruct this notion, it was easy for me to just go, it rhymes with highness.
Yeah.
And do I want to be that person? And it was very easy for me to free up my spirit and my negative thoughts about personalization of everything. It's all about me and it's about I.
Yeah.
Do I want to be your highness?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
So it's very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, trying to connect the dots. We are training for controlling, may not be the right word, practice the in the positive thoughts, but that's an I. How that associate the I-ness, try to give up the I. I mean, I'm trying to kind of connect the dots here.
You want to answer me?
Well, it's a level of development. It's first of all realizing that as long as the self still exists, you have to get some organization with that self. You have to bring some discipline to that self. But it's not because you are concretizing that self. You're just disciplining it while it's still present until it disappears. So that way, even when there's still a self, it's not that angry self or that irate self or that selfish self that persists in the world. It's a different self. It's a more compassionate, a more loving, a more accepting and non-judgmental self. And then once that softness begins to develop within the self, ultimately you realize that, well, I don't need a self to defend me. The world is pretty empty and benign all by itself. And I let go of the self too. And that's just another level of development.
So I want to say it took me about 8 years to even begin to get some understanding of, of non-self. So 2 months, no way to do for you, but a lot of things we hear, we just hold, like pondering, what does that mean? What does that mean? And as we have insights, have clarity about things, after a while, the dots do connect, and then we it's like having a picture, it's like a Rubik's Cube, and you're working with that cube and you just can't get those last few pieces, you know, and it takes a long time. You did the first ones really fast, but those last, they're just, it's perplexing. But yet, you know, based on what you've done with the cube, you know that they can all fit. And so you have the patience to wait for those answers, because you're reveling in what you are accomplishing, what you are, you know, finding to be true. And then when I get that one, like that's the mother load, you know. And you can just wait for the understanding to come. You're not going to be able to mentalize it. You know, you're not going to be able to think the solution. It is an insight. It is a dawning on you. It's a revelation, because you don't have any kind of experience by which to draw a conclusion. But as you continue to develop and you have insights, you know, the unfoldment of something, then that time that will come. The other analogy I like is like putting pieces to a puzzle together. And like, this is my life, and it's all spread out on the table, you know. And I've been trying, and I find two pieces and they go together, you know. And those Alcapia, she buys these 1,000-piece puzzles. Like, just 1,000 pieces is just too much. You know, I like 100-piece puzzle or 50. You know, she buys 1,000 pieces, and when it comes out the box, I'm like, I'm not doing this. And when she starts on the table, and after like a week, maybe I look at, she's got some pieces, like all the blues, like it was 250 blues, and you know, she's got them all together, and I'm like, well, she can do it, I can do it too. And so I'll stay there for 10 or 15 minutes and can't get one piece, I just leave the table. But she just keeps plugging and plugging away, and then the puzzle's almost together, you know. And then you just got these last 20 pieces out of 1,000, and they just don't seem to go anywhere. And, you know, she doesn't do like I do, try to stick it in that, stick them. She just sits there and she just looks. She just looks. Then she gets up and goes away. She comes by and she just looks. She gets up and goes away. She comes by the next day and she just looks. And then all of a sudden she goes, done. Puzzle done. So it's like that when we practice. We can like not make heads or tails or something. It just doesn't fit. Like, I don't believe that. It's just, you know, and then all of a sudden, just looking, and it organizes, and it's all right there. You know? Yeah. So just being gentle with it.
One more question.
Enjoying the journey.
Thank you. The breathing, I assume it's the lowest level of the practice, but whether it's not doesn't matter. So my problem is we're trying to focus on breathing, then we have all these thoughts try to have this new habit in the thoughts. How I'm going to think about that, or I'm thinking about breathing. I mean, I guess I can't.
I got you. And it's not the lowest.
Oh, what is the highest? I don't know.
I mean, because it doesn't have a ranking, you know. So don't think like everything is not like it's not linear in this way. If you think more like of a slinky, you know how like you visit a situation and you come up with a solution and you're like, next thing you know, it must not have been the best because you're right back there again. But you're not right back there in the same space. You're having to deal with this, but it's in a little different space or a little higher space. So learning is circular in that kind of way as opposed to linear. Okay. And so when you're doing mindfulness of breathing, he speaks of what the purpose of it is. The purpose of mindfulness of breathing is to come to the absolute stilling of thoughts. He starts with directing the thinking until the thinking slows down and settles in, you know, to the serenity, and the thinking stops. And when the thinking stops, when we drop from that place of birthing and creating into the space of the unborn, he said that that's a taste of nibbana, here and now. into the place of the unborn. And so, you know, you could call that the beginning one. It's the beginning, the middle, and the end. You know, it's just how, whether you actually attain the fruit of it, and that depends on your cultivation and your development, both on the pillow with the meditation and off the pillow in all the daily vicissitudes that we've been talking about here. So don't be so concerned with the outcome, but just engaging in the process, and see for yourself the direct experience of the body becoming tranquilized as you bring all of your attention to one point, of the mind becoming tranquilized, and the contentment rising as the mind tranquilizes, until you just drop into this spacious, still place. And then coming out of it, what it did for you, it's like taking a shower when you're hot and dusty, how it refreshes, and how it sustains, and how it energizes without jitter, these kinds of things. So this is like, see what your own experience is. Okay?
Thank you.
I had a really quick question. So we were talking about propensities or what have you, and I identified mine, and it's not depression, but for many, so I have to out myself and say it's anxiety with aversion rising, you know. But I have a lot of friends who really suffer from depression, and it wasn't named yesterday, and I didn't quite know what the anecdote to that might be.
Depression is suppressed anger. Anger is a tool of manipulation. I don't get angry unless you don't do what I want you to do. So I get angry to convince you that you should. That's manipulation. We who grow up around that kind of anger, we learn from that, and we promise one day that we will become the angry person. We will become the powerful person. We will become the manipulator. So when I grow up and I get angry at you so that I can steer you toward where I want you to go, and you don't go that way, then I get hopelessly angry, and that's depression. So actually it's not depression, it's just anger. Some people define it, some psychologists define it as suppressed anger, but it's just unresolved anger that deals more with empathy and disappointment than anything else. In other words, I didn't get my way. And everybody else gets their way when they get angry. Why don't I get my way when I get angry? Whoa, you know, I must be something.
So would loving kindness be?
It would still be loving kindness, because
Okay.
you're not dealing with depression, you're dealing with anger.
Okay, thank you.
And remember that it manifests not always about being like having, like we think of anger always as a fighting attitude or fighting tool directed out here at somebody, and many times that is, you know, that's the case. But the thing about the thing that we have to remember is that even when I'm spewing venom out here, it's coming from in here. So there's a whole lot of damaging going on in here, even when my anger is directed out there. If I haven't gotten, and I send it out like a boomerang, it comes back inside and starts to, you know, break down inside of me, both when I was spewing it out there and when I was just containing it and it's rolling around in here. And both times I was doing the most damage in here. It's just you saw it, you know, when it was out there. But now it's in here. But both were equally as damaging to me. Great. A little bit faster, please.
May every as one and radiant with light. Share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can bind in giving unity, may their minds awaken to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward, may all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise.
Oops, 12:11, sorry.
I won't delay this, but a couple of comments. First of all, again, thanks to Venerable Pannavati and Venerable Pannadipa. Wonderful retreat and wonderful practice, so thank you. A couple of things. I just want to acknowledge that there are a lot of people who have been part of this, the retreat planning and putting this retreat together, and they are too numerous to mention, but you all know who you are.